Let me tell you about this guy.
I'll tell you about this fucker right here.
Yeah.
Good. That brings us into our topic.
Sucking things up.
Sucking things off.
Up, not off.
Off, up.
Up, yeah.
Well, I don't know. You may suck things up. It depends on what you're into.
No, I don't. Okay. No, I don't suck things up.
Well, that makes both of us. All right, Mike, dating and relationships.
As long as we're talking about sucking.
As long as we're talking about sucking.
Dating and relationships do often suck.
Yes, they do. So Gen Z is, I think, bad at dating and relationships, just in general.
That's a gentle euphemism.
And that's coming from a Gen Zer. I think that we kind of have lost a little bit of authenticity and touch with the way social media has started to shape us, and I think it causes some challenges for us.
I do too. It's I feel like you guys aren't even people anymore.
Well, we're not. That's the problem. There's too many the whole catfishing thing, right? There's too many just fake shit on the internet. So where it might actually not be a person.
Gen Z is like, oh my God, human is just a human construct.
You used to have to go to special chat websites to talk to people that weren't people and like get sucked into going and meeting some weird stranger on the internet in the middle of nowhere. But now you can go on any of the apps that are supposedly meant to, for dating and like all of these things. And you run into that nonstop. That's what a lot of the trash is.
Freaking 90% of the women on these dating apps are either fembots or men who have created these profiles to lure other men to get their money. And
right.
Right.
A lot of it is like a money scheme. It's just, can you, without ever seeing my face and me sending you these fake nudes, can you send me $1,000 for some new butt plug or some shit? I don't know.
No, they'll like steal a picture of this hot chick and create a profile using that picture, then pretend to be that girl, and then try to arrange a meeting. And it's like, oh, I have car problems, or I need an airplane ticket, or whatever. It's like, can you send me some money for this? Can you send me some money for that? And guys get suckered into it. I read the stories and that kind of junk. I'm like, I'm glad I'm not looking for a woman.
So let me ask you this. Is it, so obviously social media like provides a new like challenge, right? When Gen Z is trying to enter into the dating world, because all of their fellow Gen Zers are also doing it that way. And it's not really the, hey, let's meet at a bar scene anymore, right?
Yeah, but it's even more complicated than that. Let's say something magical happens and you meet a real person. You read a meal person.
Yeah, right? You read a meal person.
Right? So you meet a real person too. And then you decide to, maybe we're going to meet in person somewhere. Mm-hmm. We've confirmed we both exist and we're in the same neighborhood. Let's meet somewhere. And then you got to go through this whole series of woke or political correctness filters to make sure it's like, hey, let's go meet at this restaurant. Oh my God, I'm a vegan. We can't eat that. Meat is evil. You're a murderer, if you eat meat, and suddenly that relationship's crap now. So you never meet on that juncture. So it just gets ridiculous on how you have to walk along the edge of a knife just to find that right, because people are so particular and sensitive and so intolerant as they're claiming tolerance. Mm-hmm. And I think that's actually a bigger obstacle than fembots and catfishers.
The problem with it is I don't think that's just I think unfortunately that's not just Gen Z. Like that like sensitiveness is starting to flow into lots of areas of generations, and I think that that's part of the problem too, because even when Gen Z meets someone slightly older than a millennial or vice versa.
I think millennials started the peak of sensitivity. Gen Xers don't give a fuck. All right. As a whole.
I think
right?
I think that that's true, maybe as a whole, but the thing is that still the way to meet people regardless. And so you guys, Gen X isn't as much on like Tinder, but they're on Christian Mingle, right?
But here's the flaw, all right? So and this is why it doesn't really pertain, is because Gen X, we're already married and have kids and have kicked the kids to the curb, and if we're not still married, we don't give a shit about getting married again. So we're not really looking for a woman or a man, or whatever. I think the dating world is largely owned by millennials and Gen Z. And that's why it's your guys' problem and not our problem.
I think it's everybody's problem, personally. Because the people that are still running most of these sites and all of these things, as we've talked about before, people that are running the tech industry and stuff like that are Gen X. So I think it's everybody's problem.
Well, Gen X is just capitalizing on your...
Right, but that's still a problem, right? You
problem.
You see the issue and you're still capitalizing on something that you can't say that, oh, I feel this is bad, and then, oh, I'm also going to capitalize on the money.
I think you're just broadening it. All right, so... Gen X is creating these.
Yeah, but we're also broadening it by saying about just Gen Z in general.
Well, the Gen Z is the majority of the people that are looking to date that are not married, right? So even millennials tend to be married more so than not because of they're already in their 40s, so they're married, they have kids. So trying to date really is not a millennial problem. It's a Gen Z, soon to be Gen Alpha problem, where they're trying to find that wife or husband, provided that you guys are even interested in that marital culture.
Well, I think that's the issue, or I guess not the issue, but the difference right there too, right? It's like there's a lot of Gen Z that isn't even interested in being married and things like that, so they don't really care to make the effort to do it differently than because why would they if their goal isn't to get married to that person?
Absolutely. And when I talk with people that are dating and considering marriage and premarital counseling, that kind of thing, I do ask a question. They often get mad at me when I ask this question, but I tell them this is a sincere question. It's not being mean, but what do you have to gain by getting married that you don't already have?
Right.
And it's like, if you can't answer that question, then why are you getting married?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that I think Gen Z too is that where we've been put into with this whole like, you know, Tinder era and apps like Tinder. There's a bunch of variations like Tinder, right? But they all kind of the same thing. They all achieve the same goal. You swipe left and right on somebody you like, blah blah blah, right? So there's no feedback on how you should be presenting yourself and introducing yourself and first time interaction, because there's no consequence for you swiping left or right? Absolutely. If you swipe no on anyone, then there's no consequence for you and there's no consequence for the other person. And same thing if you swipe right? Like, you're judged now on how well you can text rather than how you present yourself and talk to a person in public.
And women are much more particular than men in that regard. You know, women only, was it swipe right if you like them or swipe left if you like them?
Something like that.
Well,
I don't know.
Women only like 10% of the people that they come across, and it's just nope. And it's like, quick look at the profile. If he's not immediately hot, then it's gone. If the guy is attractive, then they look at the stats. How tall is he? 5'8", gone. You know.
Have you seen those memes where it's like or like the videos of like the guy, he's created like an automatic yes swiper or whatever, and so he's got like one of those little like touch pen things on his phone, and the machine is just like swiping yes to every single girl that crosses the screen. But that's what it is now, and I think I think because of that, you know, from a male perspective, right? So I have former coworkers who basically they wanted to date, complained about dating, complained that no one liked them, blah blah blah, whatever, right? But then there is zero effort to try to date someone or meet someone,
Right.
even in the more comfortable spaces as like a Tinder or something like that. Like they just refuse to put themselves out there no matter what. And I think that's what we've started to create, is people that just don't want to put themselves out there because they've never had to be rejected. So they're so scared of being rejected that they just don't do it, right? Mm-hmm. Mommy has always told them that they're special, and anytime that they've been rejected online, they can just turn it off, or it's, you know, somebody else on a screen, so they don't have to actually face it.
Remember, have you ever had a spicy food?
Yeah.
Do you remember the very first time you had something spicy besides milk? But the very first time you have even like black pepper, right? It's a shock to the system. But then after a few bites, a few meals, it's just a flavor. It's not a spice anymore, right? And when you get to a certain age, you're expected to be exposed to black pepper and even spicier foods to a degree. And so then you eat it, it's not that big a deal. But if you're 30 years old and you have a bit of crushed red pepper for the very first time, you're like, oh my God, and your body goes into shock and you start tearing up and your throat's on fire and that kind of stuff, right? I feel that translates to the dating world, where you never had to go through the rejections early on to get desensitized to it,
right?
So that you can have more tolerance for it.
Yeah, realize that it doesn't matter, right? Like that it doesn't actually affect who you are, besides you roughing up a little bit and learning to just take it and move forward.
Actually, you can have two great high quality people that are just not compatible with each other, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Do you think that there is any, from your Gen X perspective, do you think that there's anything to be said about the younger generations not wanting to date because of what they've seen from their older generations? So like they watch their parents go through divorce and things like that, and they don't want to do it.
They've seen their parents brutalize each other, and emotionally, physically. A divorce is very, very rarely, hey, let's just do this. All right. You know, okay, what do you want? I'll take these things. Yeah, good. Let's just sign this thing. We're happy. And, you know, what do you want, the kids? Can I get them on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Yeah, no problem. It's never, it's very, very rarely that easy.
Very messy. And unfortunately, the kids get extremely mixed up and involved in the situation.
And if you think about kids, they need this strong foundation to build on. They need to understand how life works. You know, if you tell a kid they can have anything they want, they are unable to choose anything because there's just too many options, right? So parents design this is what the world looks like, and you're 5, your world looks like this. You're 8, your world's a little bit bigger, and you get to expand from there, but you have that foundation. The mother-father household that the kids are in is their foundation, and then when that breaks apart, their foundation cracks. Now they have all this uncertainty, and they know how it went for them, because kids will often say, oh, it's my fault that this isn't working. Dad got mad at me yesterday for this, and now they're divorcing, you know? So it's, they're leaving because I did this.
Mm-hmm.
And you have all those types of things, and it is traumatic and it's scarring. And so, and then you go through the divorce process itself, which could be evil incarnate,
Mm-hmm.
and the child sees that too, and then they're thinking, I don't ever want to go through that. And then they talk with their friends, and half of their friends have gone through the same thing, and they're like, why risk this?
Well, right. They're not showing any loyalty, and all they're seeing is just two people getting screwed over because they decided to do this one thing, and now now their whole life is over.
Yeah.
Mom or dad is losing everything that they worked for just because they did this one thing.
And then the mom and dad use the child as a weapon against the other one, and they talk bad about the other parent to their children.
Like, I love you more. I do these things for you. Daddy's new girlfriend does this for me. Blah blah blah.
Oh yeah, it's like your dad doesn't love you. You're only getting to see him because the court says you have to.
Right.
You know, oh, mom doesn't love you. She only has you because she wants money from me that I send her every month, you know?
Yeah. And
child support, you know?
The unfortunate part about those statements is that there's a lot that are not true, but then there are a lot that are true. And like mommy or daddy do only want money from the X situation. And so
that's the sad part, because the people that it's not true for have friends that it is true for. And then the friends that, yeah, you know, my mom gets $1,000 a month in child support, but I only get new clothes once a year. So what's happened to all that money, right? My mom gets she's got a new car,
right?
And so now that's putting down this one. Well, what is my mom doing with the child support? Do I, you know?
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate. So why would you want to?
Yeah.
And that brings us to the purpose of marriage, you know? And does that purpose still exist today? Because you go back to it, marriage, you know, whether we like it or not, has the religious foundation.
Right.
A woman and a man got married by the leader of their church in front of the community, so everybody in the community can know those two are married. You're not allowed to do anything with them anymore. All right. And that's how it was. And then because of that, they're able to consummate the marriage and have kids. Right. But now we got rid of that. You can have kids at any time that you want. All the benefits, the only benefits of marriage now is really kind of the legal, what if we're on the deathbed, the inheritance, and the tax benefits.
Right.
Right. And so it's like, and that only matters because government got involved by creating the marriage license that you have to pay them for in order to get recognized as being married.
Right. And to get all the money and all of those benefits that come with that. I think that what Gen Z, and I guess any other generation, but Gen Z in particular, who I'm talking to, since they're the ones that are dating and, you know, deciding whether or not they should get married or just screw around or whatever the case may be. And I don't think it really matters one way or the other, but I think that if you are going to make the commitment to get married, then you should be making the commitment to get married because you plan to honor the commitment in marriage. You're dedicating yourself to be loyal to somebody through any situation, and not just the whole, well, you know, whatever, we're just married just to be married.
But nobody's practiced in that anymore. Nobody's practiced in overcoming adversity.
Right. I guess that's what I'm saying. But you can't practice at it if you never do anything with it.
You can practice it in different ways. You can practice, well, that's the whole, like, the dating thing. You kind of learn kind of that kind of stuff. But you can still, like, you join the soccer team when you're 8 years old and you discover you hate soccer. Instead of quitting soccer, you finish out the season, then don't play the next year. You're learning to go through something even though you don't like it, right? And that builds up, and you start to learn ebbs and flows of things. 'Cause relationships are ebbs and flows. You're not going to be happy every single day of your marriage.
Right.
There's going to be days where you look at your spouse and you're like kind of disgusted with him or her that particular day, but you work through that and you realize that this is just a little snippet. And in the greater scheme of things, spaghetti sauce on a plate overnight is not that big a deal. You know, leaving the chicken bone on the plate instead of putting it in the garbage and, you know, putting the plate in the sink, not that big a deal. It seems pretty damn important at the moment, but you get past that.
Yeah. But at some point, Gen Z is going to have to do those things. But I guess this is where I could start getting into the broad, the divorce and like people not committing to the marriage and all of those things isn't. Gen Z is just now getting into it, but it's a multi-generational.
Oh yeah, you guys are screwed for as far as what does a good marriage look like.
Right.
Absolutely. So when I was looking at Gen Z dating, I was really looking at it. How are you going to start?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to meet? How are you going to get to the point where you can get married should you choose to go that route?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm saying is a Gen Z issue is
Mm-hmm.
how are you going to get to the problems that the rest of us have?
Right. And I think that you have to sift through and just get past the social media that you have to interact with.
Yeah, but also like if you go down to like the Gen X and the boomers and that kind of stuff, we actually had societal norms, and inside those societal norms were accepted gender roles.
Mm-hmm.
All of those have broken down, and now you guys don't even have agreed upon gender roles, and you have a sensitive atmosphere that if one person believes in a gender role, now you're a bigot,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you can't think that way, and it's bad and it's evil. But it's really just kind of a preference. This is what I'm looking for. It's a preference that you have, and everybody should be allowed to have preferences
Mm-hmm.
without being hated for preferences.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where that started to get broken down by the generation right before us, right? Is that you're not allowed to have preferences anymore. You're not allowed to like one thing because you like it and, not have to like it because everybody else likes it or,
Right.
Whatever.
And we're in that mode where if you like one thing, it means you dislike something else.
Right.
Or if you dislike one thing, it means you like the opposite.
Right. Or if you're talking about one thing, it means that you're not acknowledging anything else.
Right. Because it's like politics. All right. You can go out there and say Donald Trump is a horrible, despicable human being. You can say that, and you can provide some evidence to back up that argument.
Uh-huh.
But the other side tends to automatically go, oh, so you like Joe Biden.
Right.
No, he's a horrible, despicable human being also.
Right.
Right. So it doesn't mean if you dislike one, doesn't mean you like the other. You can dislike both. You can like both.
Yeah. So from Gen X's perspective, how do you get there, right? Because what I think, I guess what I want older people to understand is that now a lot of those norms, how you would meet somebody, things like that, they exist, but they're much more rare, right? It's not the exact same way as when they were growing up. So using the tools that you have as a Gen Zer, how do you get to that point rather than trying to jump to this like old way, because more than likely there's no one over there.
Okay, so dare to be different.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Look at the things that the millennials
We're all different.
Look at the things the millennials and Gen Xers are doing that you don't like, and don't make the same mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be intellectually lazy.
Uh-huh.
All right. So it is intellectually lazy to be offended and run away.
Right.
All right. It is intellectually lazy to simply be a victim.
Right.
All right. So take the time and seek out the understanding and the perspectives of somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Don't just automatically go back into your echo chambers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the big problems that we have today is everybody is in their own echo chambers.
Mm-hmm.
And they all believe their way is the right way. There could be 10 different right ways
Mm-hmm.
of doing something. That's what I would recommend, because you can't get to discipline if you're going to be lazy.
Yeah. Well, and part of my recommendation too is like what you just said, where there could be 10 different right ways, is go find out your right way. Like don't just do nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you never, even if you don't care to be on Tinder, right? Maybe that is your right or wrong way, whatever. Just go and do it, but also go and, I don't know, join a gym and meet people. Don't be creepy, but you know,
Right.
join activities and meet people, right?
And it's both. It's both ways. Like,
right.
Join the gym. Don't be creepy, because the guys are the creepy people looking at the chicks, right? Also, don't be the chick that's doing your TikTok trying to make it look like guys are looking at you, because that kind of stuff makes it impossible for people even to start a conversation, right? It's like, now guys thinking every girl at the gym is out to get that aha moment, become TikTok famous, you know, and then all the girls are thinking all these guys are just creepers, and we should have a girls only thing. We should have a men's only thing.
Have you seen that? Have you? I know you don't really like watch TikTok that often, but have you seen any of those videos where the people do like the reverse, where they like they'll take their own videos and then they'll look over and like, are you looking at me? And like they get all like spun up and shit and lose their mind.
There's a guy on YouTube. I watch TikTok videos via Facebook and YouTube.
Via everything else.
Yeah, via everything else. There's this a gym guy. He's famous. He has lots of subscribers, but he punks men and women at the gym for their poor gym etiquettes, and a lot of them are the girl TikTokers setting it up and that kind of stuff. And the guy tries to help, and she's like, "Oh my God!" It's like, well, if we look at this, you're about to break your damn neck, and he's trying to prevent you from letting that happen to you, you know, and you're out here punking him on that. Don't do that. So I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I just hate to see the unnecessary divide that people are doing because they want attention.
Yeah. Well, nobody's able, because of the everybody trying to be viral and put this thing out there. There's no room for failure, right? You can't as either gender or anyone, whatever your case is, you can't go out there and make a mistake, because now it's going to end up on the internet and viral, and now you're not going to be with anybody, because now it's all over the internet because of your mistake. And I think that that's part of the problem too, is that now failure is public, and it's so publicized that you could be canceled for it and never allowed to go talk to somebody again.
Absolutely. I'm glad I don't live in the Gen Z era, because I don't want that. I look at that and I was like, that would be horrible conditions to live in.
Yeah. Well, in intimacies that you share with whatever partner you're with, you have to be careful, because they can instantly become shared with everybody.
Yeah.
And that's part of that. I think that's part of why Gen Z has such a hard time breaking out of their shell. And I'm not saying it is or isn't justified, but they're terrified of being caught on camera or caught doing something that was just a mistake, and they're learning, and now they're viral on TikTok.
Gen Xers and millennials, their issues in relationships isn't getting into one, because they pretty much are. They predominantly are, right? Their problem is they are sabotaging their relationships. There's so many people putting their spouse on blast, right? Shaming their partner on TikTok to get likes, and get attention. I went viral because I shamed my partner. Well, my partner's not on TikTok, so he or she will never see it. And then a friend of theirs says, "Do you see what your wife did? Do you see what your husband did?" And show it to you, and then boom, divorce. Because who wants that? Yeah,
and I think that's part of where Gen Z is struggling.
So I recommend decorum. It's something that is absolutely positively absent from our politics. Believe it or not, there used to be a day and age where the Republican presidential candidate and the Democratic presidential candidate could have a debate, disagree, and still be cordial with each other. And I think,
well, that's
back to that.
That's what proper debating is, and it's the same way with proper relationships, right? You should be able to have a conversation with somebody, make mistakes with somebody, things like that, and still be respectful. You can still be respectful to somebody even when they're not respectful to you. You can still do what you need to do, leave them, I don't know, whatever the case may be, without destroying somebody's life. And I'm not talking about in the instances where they're like beating you to death. I'm just talking about like
putting them on blast.
stupid shit. Yeah. I'm not talking about the serious cases, just talking about the dumb mistakes that both sides make to each other and that get put on blast for no reason.
Yep. Absolutely. And it goes back to emotion though, right? You got to have emotional intelligence, emotional maturity. When you start to get heated, you need to be able to recognize it and have a game plan on what you're going to do with that instead of what you want to do with that.
Well, I think Gen Z gets caught up in, and I think actually a lot of people do now. They kind of get caught up in this, like the visibility of getting self-help without actually doing the steps to self-help.
Absolutely.
And then your goal is to not stay in like the self-help era, and you never move out of that. Like your goal should be to get through whatever that is. And I think what happened, I think that plays into like their dating. Like they stay into that like role of like dating and like, oh, it's just me, blah blah blah, whatever, and then they never move past that.
And if you go into marriage, a lot of people mistake marriage as like a conclusion. All right, we did all this dating, we're finally made it, we're getting married, yay!
Yeah,
the work is over.
Complete opposite.
Right. It's like you realize dating is just the prequel, and the real story starts in here.
Right.
And so that's where all the work begins, and that's why I highly recommend premarital counseling. Whether you're religious or not, you can still do premarital counseling. There are questionnaires that can be used, and I've conducted these before, that you both take separately, and then the result, then you come together, the counselor gets the results tabulated, and based on that, it gives you some talking points that you need to, work on, and it lets you know, are you seeing things through rose-colored glasses? Because you think there's not going to be any problems in this marriage, and there's going to be, and that type of thing. But that's when it starts asking you questions that you haven't even talked about. It's like, okay, so she believes in spanking, and he thinks you should just treat display actions with ice cream. This is going to be a problem if you're going to have kids. You want 5 kids, he wants no kids. How are we going to resolve this?
Right. Well, and I think that's where Gen Z can actually accelerate, right? With their movements in like self-help and going to get counseling, regardless if you had a traumatic experience or not. You can go and do these things, and that's where you can actually not be treated as a social outcast because you went to counseling, right? Rather than in older generations where you were crazy if you did any kind of counseling. So I think that's where they can actually thrive and not and can do better than their previous.
Right. And that's why I'm actually trying to get people to call it premarital coaching instead of counseling, because counseling comes across as you got this problem, right? But premarital coaching is just hey, we're going to go through some coaching exercises to prepare you for marriage.
You get training and coaching just like you do anything else. Just like when you go and perform anything else, go to school, whatever.
But maybe your kids will have an algorithm that's created based on their personality, where they take a questionnaire.
Yeah, my kids
creates this algorithm, and then it tracks everybody else. So then when you put the person's name into this computer, it tells you on day 1 if you're algorithmically compatible.
Yeah, my kid's robotic nanny will be able to scan them and then pick their perfect partner.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So so from a Gen Z perspective, right? I think I agree that like Gen Z's dating tactics are kind of all over the place. If we have any dating tactics,
I think millennials tore down all the rules of the culture, but there's no new rules in place yet. And so, sorry, but you and Alpha are just going to be
Well,
Pulling a Moses and doing a 40 years of wandering in the desert.
I think that part of it is too, like with Gen Z, a lot of us are just now getting to the age to establish those rules in society. The whatever the new ones are.
Yeah, well, and this is where it sucks to be Gen Z. All right, you guys are going through it because all the rules have been taken away. Now you're going through all the consequences of not having rules. Going, this sucks. We need rules.
Yeah.
And then your offspring are going to have rules that you guys created based on your horrible experiences, which they will then try to rebel against.
Right. Yep. Exactly. It all comes back down to fuck the boomers.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I don't know how that relates, but I'm sure we could tie it in there somewhere.
Yeah, they gave birth to the millennials. That's why it's their fault.
Well, alrighty. That's all I got.
Yeah. So if you guys have any questions about Gen Z, or actually any generational relationships, put it in the comments. And as long as you're putting things in comments, you might as well like, subscribe, hit the notification button, right?
Yep, all of those things. I think there's a little bell.
Yeah, a bell, thumbs up, whatever it is.
If you have questions about like what each generation's perspective is on things versus like our personal perspective, let us know too, right? Like there's some things that we may be able to talk about from a whole generational perspective and not just a Mike and Brandon Gen X Gen Z perspective
if you think you're wrong, tell us why you think we're wrong.
Yeah, if you think you're wrong, tell us why you think you're wrong.
If you think we're wrong, tell us why you think we're wrong so that we can tell you that you're wrong for thinking that we're wrong.
Yep, you're always wrong because we're the hosts. Fuck everybody
it's our podcast, not yours. Screw you.
All right, thanks guys. Thank you for watching.
Peace be the journey.